Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order this Committee of the Whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. Welcome, everyone, to the Council chambers this evening. We're glad that you're here. Second item is disclosures of pecuniary interest. Does anybody have a pecuniary interest they'd like to declare on the agenda? The Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I have one on item 7.4.1. I'm a member of the Sportsman's Club, so I'll be declaring it at that moment.
Do you have a written version of that? Okay,
yes,
very good.
Clerk, thank you.
Very good. So with that, and before we go further into the agenda, I would just like to take a moment on this Remembrance Day to recognize the sacrifice of all of those who have fought in wars overseas to protect our freedoms here in Canada. And for that purpose, I would appreciate it if everyone would join Council in rising, removing your caps if you're wearing them, and join us in 1 minute of silence. Thank you. So we have no additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda. There is no request for open forum this evening, so that moves us on to delegations, and we have 3 delegations this evening. And before I call the first one, I'll just remind all the delegations that the delegations are 10 minutes in length, and we'll try to hew closely to that number if possible. So our first delegation is from Joyce Johnson, the chair of the Municipal Heritage Committee, about the 2019 Heritage Conservation Award for Mr. G. William Streeter. Joyce.
Mayor Charbonneau, members of council, staff, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to be here this evening representing the Municipal Heritage Committee to present the 2019 Municipal Heritage Conservation Award. This award is presented in recognition of heritage-minded individuals within Saugeen Shores. We seek nominations from the public by requesting them to recommend individuals who are involved in conserving heritage, either by protecting our buildings and surroundings or through educating others. The Municipal Heritage Committee is dedicated to preserving heritage throughout Saugeen Shores. We believe maintaining reminders of our history is absolutely necessary for future generations. Keeping this in mind, each year Saugeen Shores Council presents an award that lets us promote and celebrate the valuable role an individual or an organization plays in ensuring that these structures and the stories from the past continue to be present in our community. This year's nomination came from Vice Deputy Mayor Mike Myatt. Thank you, Mike. Vice Deputy Mayor noted that G. William Streeter has had only a brief history on the Municipal Heritage Committee, but in that time he has done an extraordinary amount of research and development on many projects. Bill was born in Bruce County, attended elementary school in Southampton. He began school in 1948 at the Continuation School and was part of the first graduating class from G.C. Houston in 1955, the inaugural year. He then went on to attend Saugeen District High School here in Port Elgin, which is now the Maple Square Mall, graduating in 1959. In 1960, Bill left our area to try his luck in Toronto. He started working at the Goodyear Tire as a junior accountant. Bill has owned property in our community for 50 years, often spending time here with his family. In 1998, he retired from Goodyear, Canada, after working there 38 years, and moved back to Saugeen Shores, part-time initially, and eventually permanently in 2010. Since that time, he has volunteered for the Southampton Rotary Club, the Saugeen Shores Planning Committee, and subsequently for the Saugeen Shores Municipal Heritage Committee. He is an active member of the Bruce County Historical Society, the Southampton Golf and Country Club, as well as Chantry Seniors. Bill is also a member of the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 155 and assists them with their historical matters. Since joining the Municipal Heritage Committee, Bill has done much research on a variety of projects, and I will list a few at this time. The first is the Commemorative Banner project. Bill has a passion for the role that members of our community have played in defending our country. He works closely with the two local Royal Canadian Legions to locate photos of soldiers that are recognized on our cenotaphs for the areas around Southampton and Saugeen Township, Port Elgin, and Saugeen First Nation number 29. This year, banners are on display honoring 48 soldiers that made the supreme sacrifice. 24 banners are flying in Port Elgin and 24 in Southampton. Bill is working diligently to locate the pictures and stories of the other 33 soldiers. He has found information for each soldier, where they were born, where they died, and has located and documented their military career. Bill also assists us with our Interpretive Plaque projects. The first project that he spearheaded was the Mosquito Bomber Plaque in Southampton. In 2016, Bill took a special interest in the Mosquito Bomber fighting plane. During the Second World War, the Dominion Plywood Factory, formerly located on Albert and Adelaide Streets in Southampton, played an important role in supporting the Allied efforts in Europe. Plywood parts for the bomber were built in this factory. Bill met with volunteers at the Aircraft Museum in Windsor, whose project is to reconstruct a mosquito bomber. One of the volunteers from the museum attended the plaque unveiling and donated an actual wingtip from a mosquito bomber, which is currently located in the mayor's office, proudly on display. Bill also worked with the Saugeen Township Agriculture Plaque. He met with several local farmers to develop the story of agriculture in Saugeen Township. He feels that the Interpretive Plaque tells a story of the development of agriculture from 1851, when it began, to where it is today. He continues working on a new plaque, which he calls Ladies in Uniform. With all the work on the Commemorative Banner project, Bill discovered that our community also had women enlist in World War I as nursing sisters, and of course in World War II in non-combat roles. He is currently researching 17 ladies' stories and pictures to highlight on a future plaque. He helps us with our heritage outreach. Each year he attends the Marine Heritage Fair and the Pumpkin Fest to spread the word about heritage in Saugeen Shores. He feels it is important to promote heritage in a positive and interesting way. He remembers people that lived and worked in Southampton, and his memory of facts is exceptional as he tells stories of his past experiences. Bill has also worked on many other projects, and over the last 8 years, Bill has researched and made presentation in our community to Rotary clubs, to the Legions, Probus, the Chantry Center. Many of Bill's stories are published in the local media, the Royal Canadian Legion's newsletters, and various historical booklets. Bill had an interesting curling career. I'd like to sit down and talk to him about it someday. He started curling in Southampton in 1956 and ended in 2018 after 62 years of curling with and against some of the best people of the time. He started curling when the Southampton Curling Club was a 2-sheet attachment to the north side of the old tin shed arena, and he curled on natural ice. Congratulations to Bill for all your efforts on these many projects. We value the information you share with us from your many tours across the globe. We appreciate your time and enthusiasm spent in promoting our heritage. We anxiously await the completion of your new project. Would you please come forward at this time and receive the 2019 Municipal Heritage Conservation Award from Mayor Charbonneau. Come up here and the mayor will give it to you. You come up here and the mayor will give it to you.
Thanks a lot, everybody. But unfortunately, I thought I had the 10 minutes. But I do want to thank all those that helped, Mike and Joyce, and Tracy's been a great help. And I got to mention Sandy, because she's been wonderful. But I do want to take a minute and tell you a story. And I want to tell you a heritage story, and I'll keep it brief, but I do want to tell it to you because to me it's very important. Last week, after one of the ladies in uniform presentations, I was asked by one of the people in the audience, what's your next project? Well, just like that I could answer, because it's the same one I was going to do last year before I started working on ladies in uniform. So I told him what it was. Then I was thinking about it after. At home, I got about 7 projects that I got to get done that I'm committed to doing. And but they're all virtually the same. It's all about people of significance in our community, every one of them. And then I realized that that's purely my total focus now on heritage, is people of significance in the community. Now, here's the Coles Note version of a story that you haven't heard before and that you should have heard, and everybody should know it, okay? And it happened 70 years ago when I first got involved. And it happened when my mother told me, I was 7 or 8 at the time, and she told me, don't go near that fallen down old house of Dr. Scott's. It's all covered in vines and bushes, and it's collapsing into its own basement. And that stuck in my mind. Then 2.5 years ago, I was doing another little project for a friend. And in her notes about her ancestor, it said, he was visited by kindly Dr. Scott. So, who was Dr. Scott? Well, Dr. Scott is William Sumner Scott, born in 1825 in Esquessing Township between Georgetown and Oakville, right off of Trafalgar Road. He was educated at the New Athens Theological School in Ohio. He then went and he graduated from the University of Toronto Medical School as a medical doctor. That wasn't enough. He then went to Kingston and graduated and studied medical surgery and graduated as a medical surgeon. Then he did something that's so important for all of us. What he did, he signed a contract to service the needs of the people of Saugeen number 29. Then, what did he do? He found his way to Goderich. This was 1856. He took the ship to the mouth of the Saugeen, walked up the little hill, and there on top of the hill was Alexander McNabb, the recently acclaimed reeve of Saugeen Township. And McNabb owned a property on Huron Street, and he rented that to Dr. Scott as his premises. So Dr. Scott set up practice. But the big news was that he was a surgeon. The two doctors before him were not. So the word spread through Saugeen, Amabel, Aaron, Eldersley, Bruce, all throughout the whole area, that the new doctor, not like the first two, this one was a surgeon. And that was a big step forward. The premises, he got really busy. The premises weren't enough, so he built himself a home with a clinic. And that's the one I was told to not play at. Now, he moved in there in 1859, and then 90 years later, it was falling down and collapsing into its basement. So, but he then had to convince that girlfriend of his in Kingston that it was time for her to come up and move into the newly incorporated village of Southampton, which she did. And they set out and they ended up with a family of five, three boys and 2 girls. He was also, at that time, he was a member of the Saugeen Rifles, which was a local militia. And in 1866, 106 of them mustered and went down to Goderich, because Goderich was the largest port on the upper Great Lakes at the time, and it was under threat of the American Fenian invasion. So the 106 of them mustered with a few hundred other people from our militiamen. But they all received, of course, after Niagara, when the Fenians got defeated, the invasion of Goderich never did happen. They all got the British Military Medal, General Service Medal from the British military, all 106 of them. There's one of them in the museum, and there's one of them in the hands of a young assistant cook in a restaurant in Southampton, and I'm trying to get him to give his to the museum right now. So that was 1866. We know what happened when they built the beautiful new school in Southampton, which today is the north building of the museum. And what did Dr. Scott do? What did he have to do with that? Well, he agreed to be the public school inspector, and he kept that little side job for 10 years. All the time serving the community. And also the 32nd Bruce Militia, which was in fact the total militia for the county. But if you walk out the door, go around the corner right over there, you'll see his name up there. And why? For 8 years, he was reeve. 4 terms in the 1880s and 1890s. And he also, nobody's perfect. He did serve for 20 years as the president of the North Bruce Conservative Association. But there was 2 other organizations that he was involved with, and the one I'd never heard of till the other day when I finally went in and researched what it was. And what it was, he was also a member of the International Order of Foresters and a new organization that I never heard of called the Secular Organization of Sobriety. So he was also a member of that organization. So as I said, in 1876, he was a school inspector. But outside on the wall, it says William S. Scott, Reeve of Southampton for 8 years in a row. But the icing on the cake came in 1895. And that is when the Canadian album, Men of Canada, Success by Example, included him. And let me just, I'm almost to the end, folks, so I'm not going to go over my 10 minutes, I don't think. But that included Men Across Canada. And it's a thick, thick book, okay? And in there is a picture of him with a story of his contribution to his community. Now, just to bring it close to an end, I told you that there were 5 kids, 3 boys and 2 girls. The 3 boys, they all, from that time, which was common, all 3 went on to higher education. 2 of them became doctors and 1 of them became a pharmacist. The 2 girls, they stayed at home. The 2 boys that became doctors, one went to Alberta and stayed there and was doctored for 44 years in the town of Lacombe, Alberta. The other son, Patrick, he came back to Southampton, took over his father's practice, and continued to practice there. Both boys enlisted in World War I, went overseas. One served in the field hospital in Belgium behind the trenches. The other brother went into France and served in a field hospital there. Both returned home, lived, survived. Now, the one that came to Southampton, the year was 1930. The biggest news story in our community, in 1930, had to do with Dr. Scott. Dr. Scott had this friend who was a schoolmate growing up, knowing him all of his life. Dr. Scott at the time was 66. This is Patrick Scott. And his friend had been having some serious mental problems, and he'd been treating him. So on Sunday, June the 16th, 1930, after church, Dr. Pat went over to his home, went through the door, and walked in, and his friend hollered at him, "You've been putting poison in my medicine." And he shot him twice in the head. Now, the story is in the Southampton Sun-Times, okay? I'm sorry, the Owen Sound Sun-Times. Anyway, Dr. Scott staggered out the door, headed across the field to the patient's sister's house, fell down part way, crawled up onto the stoop, and the sister found him, sent him off to Owen Sound General Marine Hospital. Okay, and the news report was that he has a fair chance of survival. Well, survive he did, but the patient did not. He turned the gun on himself, and in the goriest details of the day, which was common back then, it describes how, in fact, he killed himself. Now, Dr. Scott then, at age 66, he served the community for another 8 years, right through until 1938, and that's when he retired. And he passed away 6 years later, up in Kirkland Lake, visiting his son, who was a mining engineer. Now, my good friend Steve McLean, your cemetery manager, him and I go out to the Pioneer Cemetery to find the family plot and we found it. No gravestones, but we found the plot, and there's 5 of the family members buried in that plot. And William Sumner Scott, who died in 1902, at age 77, is buried in there in that plot of 5. But we did find Patrick's grave out on in the new cemetery, and he died. Now, that's the story I wanted to share with you tonight. Now, I got to ask the press, so please, would you please wait until I get it totally finished and get the whole story done before you tell everybody about it? No, you do what you like. But anyway, that's the kinds of stories that are available when we start researching people of significance in our past. And to me, it was just an amazing find to be able to work through that. But it did take a bit of time. Anyway, thanks very much for the award. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And thanks for that. Thanks for that story, Bill. That was good. And I suspect there may be some members who want to make a comment. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
I just want to make a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, and Bill. It's really evident how much passion you have for heritage, for research, and as people drive around the community, they see the interpretive signs, they see the banner program, and the women in uniform. I heard your presentation of Provost last week, and I think you spent 300 hours on your most recent piece of research. And I just wanted to let you know, and I see your family members here this evening, and I just want you to know that I think I can speak on behalf of all the council here, that this council certainly is very proud of you, and our Heritage Committee is very proud of you. And Bill, I know your family are very much proud of you too. So I just want to say thank you very much for all you do for this community, for Heritage. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks so much.
Further comments? Councillor Grace?
Mr. Mayor and Bill, after having worked with you on the Heritage Committee, I can also say how much I admire your perseverance and your expertise. I just wanted to share something really quickly. Last week, I went to the Southampton Town Hall on Thursday night and heard the author Maureen Jennings, who is the author of the Murdoch Mysteries, among other things, and she was fantastic. But one of the things she commented on about our town were the interpretive banners for the soldiers, and she just said how impressed she was about that. So thank you for all your work on that.
Thanks, Cheryl. One sentence, Mr. Mayor. Yesterday, Bob, I was looking at some stuff, and I said, my God, we have a banner up, and in the background of that man's picture is the Anglican Church in Southampton. And so we're going to move that banner up in front of the Anglican Church next year, because and the church will, in fact, honor that, and they'll have special mention. Why? Because one of the windows in that church was bought by that family, and so it just keeps going on and on. It's a forever story.
Is there anything else from any members? I'll just say for myself, Bill, thank you very much for all work that you've done for the community. It's particularly fitting that you're here on Remembrance Day today, because so much of your work has been focused on remembering folks from our community who fought in wars and died in wars on our behalf. So that work is particularly appreciated today. But all of your work is. My own father would extend his thanks if he was here for the work you did with him on the agricultural plaque and so much else. So really on behalf of the entire community, Bill, thank you for your work. Congratulations on the award, and all the best to you and to your family.
Okay, much appreciated. Thank
you. So that moves us on to our second delegation, which is from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority's Chief Financial Officer on the 2020 budget. And I see that we have both Laura Molson, who is the Chief Financial Officer, as well as Dick Hibma, who is the newly installed General Manager at Saugeen Conservation. So come on up, guys, and
I'm just going to take the opportunity, Your Worship, members of council and staff and members of the public, to say thank you very much to Councillor Myatt. He's known me for quite a few years, and he seemed to think that I'd be a good person to step into this vacancy with Wayne Broman's retirement. I'm hoping I can prove him right. I'm hoping that he is a good judge of character and so on, but I do want to acknowledge Mike's efforts in that regard, because I consider this a real privilege to step into this position at this point in time. I don't have the answers. Laura will have the answers, and you'll have the questions, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening. So this is a pretty short presentation on our 2020 budget. We only have about 5 slides here. If you do have any questions as we go, I'd be more than pleased to answer those, or certainly I'll take questions at the end. Okay, so just starting off, it's just a little bit of background on our budget preparation for the new year. Of course, we use current year-to-date actuals and projections for year-end, as well as prior years to base our budget on for next year. The authority members do get to review our individual budgets line by line by department, and that would be the same package that you were all circulated as well. That information is also available on our website if anybody would like that, or members of the public. It's certainly available for everybody to see. Which brings me to the next thing. The thing that people are most interested in is our general levy for the year. And we do our general levy apportionments based on current value modified assessments that we receive from the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. Historically, that was MNRF that we would receive that from. Once we have the draft budget prepared or approved in principle by our board members, we then circulate it to the member municipalities. There is a 30-day mandatory review period that we have to circulate it to you for. And this year, actually, we had the budget circulated at the beginning of October, and our board will be voting on that budget the beginning of December. So we had good leeway this year. So for 2020, our total budget is $3.5 million. And I just have here the sources of funding that we do receive. So you'll see the almost 50-50 split between the self-generated funds and also our general levy. You'll see little tiny pies in there for the provincial funding, a little bit of special levy, and just a little bit of reserves. So we'll get to the provincial funding bit in a minute. So this is just showing our general levy changes over the last 5 years. And you'll note that in 2019, we actually didn't have any increases in our general levy. So the yellow bars are the authority as a whole, and then the dark red brown bars are actually Saugeen Shores levy increases over the last 5 years. And in 2018 and 2019, Saugeen Shores levy actually decreased. So challenges in preparing the 2020 budget. One of the things that actually happened during 2019 was the province cut our funding by almost half partway through the year. Of course, our fiscal year runs January to December, and the province's is April to March. So mid-April, we received notification that we wouldn't be receiving all of the funding that we had been expecting. Given that, our board members have decided that it would be prudent to expect that we may have further reductions coming for 2020. So that's why the budget is based on that, just a conservative approach. One of the other items, as I mentioned, is we did not have any increases in 2019. As part of the conservative approach, I guess. I hate to keep using the word conservative. But we are actually, unfortunately, discontinuing the agricultural outreach program for 2020, and it was a program that we'd had quite a lot of success with in the last 4 or so years. And it's not that it won't be going forward in the future, it was just decided for 2020 that may be a program that the authority members could put on hold. And that is about it. Any
Okay, thank
questions?
you. Thanks, Laura and Dick. Questions or comments from members of the committee? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Just a couple of comments and questions, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank you, Laura, for your great work. I know it's a pleasure sitting around the Conservation Authority table, working with you. And I know you spent a lot of time at this time of year with budgeting and coming in with a small levy increase this year, Mr. Mayor, and 0 last year. I think is a good thing for our municipality. It's always, in my mind, a little bit dangerous coming in at 0 because next year you can be hit pretty hard, but we were able to make some changes this year. And so I think I just want to congratulate you and Laura and welcome our new manager, Dick Hibma. It's nice having you. We're lucky to have you. So welcome. The agricultural outreach program was unfortunately one of the cuts in this year's budget. And the question you, Laura, perhaps Dick may want to answer, but that's something that could always be returned in future years. We're going to try it for 1 year without the outreach program, but it's something 2021 I think it's important for the agricultural community to know is that we could see the return of the program?
Yes, that is what the plan was, is just to put it on hiatus for 2020, and certainly who knows what's going to happen in 2021. There also might be future funding possibilities. We did receive grants for the first 2 years to run the program, and then after that the authority had been running it from our own funds. But certainly in 2021 we can see what's...
I just want to say, Mr. Mayor, I think the budget is a very responsible budget. We're looking at over $100,000 in cuts from the provincial government. Some of it cut last year outright, and this year we're just planning on it not being there. So I think it's a responsible approach. So I just want to thank you again for your great work.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions from members of the committee? I would just, I'd echo those comments. I think this is, it's been a challenging year for the Conservation Authority and conservation authorities. and I think the Saugeen Valley has managed those challenges reasonably well in the context that you have to deal with. And I know maybe you could speak to this, maybe Dick could speak to it. The province is continuing along the path of altering or proposing to alter how conservation authorities might operate. One of those proposals is to push conservation authorities to do things that are only within their mandate, or to achieve something like the mandate that they might have. And I wonder, do we know now, or do we have any idea, either at our level or at Conservation Ontario, as to what that might look like or what that might mean?
Yeah, I can give you some information on that. Subsequent to the letter that was issued from the minister back in August, there was some pushback, as you can anticipate, and subsequent to that, each of the conservation authorities have had the opportunity to sit down with the minister and or his staff, as well as some other folks from the provincial government. And they've been asking questions, and the conservation authority people have been making presentations explaining to a lot of relatively new people in the provincial government who really don't understand what conservation authorities are, who they are, what part of the province they operate in, the variety of programs that they offer, how they're governed, and all of those kind of things that provincial government should know but seems to have forgotten. The government is now treating that as pre-consultation and intending to have more broader consultation on a regional basis in the first part of 2020 before they draft the regulations that will ultimately determine what core mandate and non-core programs mean. Right now, they just come out with statements referencing those with no definition, no regulation, no consultation to determine what is core and what's not. So we're working through that process rather anxiously, because we can't determine what programs we should curtail, continue, seek further funding from our municipal partners until there's some clarity around it. So we're also, in concert with AMO, working with provincial government to establish a proper timeline for those kind of changes. If they want to change how we do business, you need to make those decisions and then let your budget process incorporate those changes rather than in-year changes of the nature we had this past year. So we're hoping that we can develop a better working relationship going forward.
And I'm hopeful that those opportunities for input will include municipalities. I know, for example, natural heritage commenting isn't technically within the mandate of conservation authorities, but we've discovered through some fairly good research of late in the Saugeen watershed that conservation authorities are indeed the best agencies to provide that commenting. So, I think municipalities know that. We certainly know it. And we value those services, and I hope that it's certainly something, we'll be interested in commenting if those opportunities arise. Hopefully the Conservation Authority might advise the municipality and all of us if there are opportunities for us to provide those comments and support. So I'd certainly encourage you to keep communicating with us about that, because we'll want to be part of that discussion.
We will definitely be doing that, because in today's climate, municipal partners are the key partner that we're dealing with. Laura didn't point out how narrow that slice of provincial contribution to our programs. It's 1% of that pie.
Yeah.
And that's the reduction from back before it was maybe 3%. And those dollar values had been untouched until this downward direction since 1995. So, yeah, you people are our key partner.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you guys very much for coming in tonight and for that update. So that moves us then on to our final delegation, which is from Christopher McCanty, Manager of Community Indigenous Relations with Bruce Power, and he's here with an update. Chris.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, Mayor Charbonneau, Council, staff, members of the media and the public as well. I feel it's important to provide regular updates to Council. Moving forward, we're within 66 days now of the start of what we call Breaker Open, which is the start of the major component replacement program on Bruce B Reactor Unit 6. And so I feel it will just be important, and if it pleases Council, we'd like to come out on a semi-annual basis to provide timely updates as to what's happening, what work series are being progressed, the people that are coming to site, what they're doing, and then what impact that might have on the community. So very much appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight, and we'll certainly stay within the 10-minute allotted time for this update. So thank you. First and foremost, Bruce Power is an operator. There's a lot going on in innovation space, outages, and of course major component replacement / life extension, but we're first and foremost an operator whose main focus is the safe operation of our reactor units. And so I'd like to start with some operational updates that I think it might be of interest. Earlier this year, this past August, Unit 1 surpassed a record whereby that had not been achieved since the 1990s, since before the unit was shut down, whereby Unit 1 achieved 361 days of continuous operation. It had been some time before that had been accomplished, and that record continues uninterrupted to this day. I think this bodes well for the refurbishment of the Units 3 through 8 in terms of the workmanship, the quality of the components that's going in, and the skill of the people, and of course all that planning and preparation work that goes into that. So we think that one's of particular notice to know that it bodes well, and these units will post-refurbishment run for decades as planned in a safe, reliable manner. Unit 3, coming out of that outage this past spring, one of the notable achievements coming out of that outage was we increased by just under 30 megawatts an uprate on that unit, whereby we took the net generation rating from our site from 6,400 to 6,430 megawatts. So not a huge increase, but a net increase of emissions-free power to the grid, thereby strengthening the kind of the business case for the site, and all doing that within a safe operating envelope as well. You can look forward to future potential for that, for us looking at the conventional side of our business and seeing where there might be opportunities to increase generation from the site, thereby strengthening the site's prospects going forward, and kind of improving the general picture for the operation as we move into the decades ahead. So two quick operational updates that I want to provide. But certainly as we get into within 66 days again, starting our field work in Unit 6, I want to start with just a brief update on life extension. So life extension is the broader context in which major component replacement sits. Life extension itself is starting with Unit 6, major component replacement in January of 2020, January 17th to be exact, which is a $13 billion private investment. All Bruce Power will receive post-refurbishment is the price of power that we've always received under contract, but all of those project accountabilities and risks will reside with the company and its owner organizations. Life extension itself is the broader context that continues for the next several decades. And kind of a quick snapshot there is on Units 1 and 2 restart, we took on a lot more scope during that outage window, but that's being tightened. We know that we need to bring these in on time, on budget, within a relatively shorter time frame. And so the balance of that work that doesn't happen during MCR outages will happen over regular planned outages over the next several decades on an asset management strategy, and that's life extension. And then the major component replacement outages are being kept to very tight, delivered, clearly defined scope that hasn't moved in the last couple of years. It's been locked down, and gives us much more predictability in terms of the outcomes that we seek. So 22,000 direct and indirect jobs from life extension, and then in MCR in particular, about 5,000 direct and indirect jobs during that major component replacement outage period. We're looking to see a lot of benefits, many of which have already been realized. We want to keep that going, and part of the rationale for coming out and giving updates will be timely kind of reporting on how that's going and any opportunities we might see. MCR itself, I'll be really quick on this one. What is it? It's facilities and infrastructure. We've constructed a lot of buildings both on and off site to facilitate throughput of the work, bring people in more efficiently, and then support that increased number of people that will be working on our site during the major component replacement period. Key piece of scope is fuel channel replacement. So pressure tubes, these are per reactor, 480 zirconium alloy tubes that house the fuel. Calandria tubes that the pressure tubes sit within. as well as zirc alloy that will be replaced during MCR, and the feeder tubes, which are the carbon steel tubes that come off either end of the reactor face and carry coolant to and from the steam generators. So 960 of those per reactors will be replaced, and then the steam generators themselves, 8 per unit. And there is some infrastructure work, some valve work, but again, really keeping to this tightly defined scope on major components. Just a bit about medical isotopes. As you may know, Bruce Power since the mid-1980s has been a major global supplier of cobalt-60. Cobalt-59 is installed in our reactors and serves a purpose in the reactor in the form of adjuster rods that help with reactivity control. But because we insert cobalt-59 and after up to 2 to 3 years harvest cobalt-60, we've been able to produce consistently a large enough supply to allow for the sterilization of roughly 40% of the world's single-use medical instruments. Cobalt-60 from the Bruce B reactors has also been used in the eradication of the Zika virus and also for things like food irradiation. This past summer, we were really pleased to add to that story to announce an innovative partnership with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, whereby we will partner on the marketing of a new isotope and other isotopes to continue in the future, but starting with lutetium-177. Lutetium-177 will be introduced to the reactors on a brand new delivery system that can be used on both Bruce A and Bruce B reactors. That's a partnership with Framatome and Connectrix on a new delivery system that exposes unirradiated targets to our high neutron fields, which is why they're there in the first place. And so a stable isotope called tiberium-176 goes in, and after just a couple of weeks will come out as lutetium-177. This medical isotope is used in the treatment of prostate cancer, and we're looking at other isotopes that can be exposed to our neutron fields and get to market and help kind of treat other cancers such as breast cancer in another recent announcement that we just made through a company called Excision and GammaPod Technology. So lots to come in this space. None of this impacts the safe operation of our units, but it's indeed an additional benefit that we can realize on top of that. Not just additional income, but a greater contribution to the global medical community and the treatment of cancers and other industrial applications as they come up. Very quickly on that, I just want to stress, because we do say none of this impacts safe operation of the units, we're strictly a neutron source in this regard. So the isotope, unirradiated target delivery systems that will be installed at Bruce A and Bruce B and will be set for operation within the next couple of years, going live in 2022, will just be a delivery system to expose unirradiated targets to our neutron fields, thereby producing lutetium-177 and other medical isotopes that will be then post-processed off-site by an isotope production facility and then sent to market. We're strictly the neutron source, but we want to do everything we can in this space to bring the greatest benefit that we can to the global medical community. Just a bit on community engagement. We're very pleased to continue with our post-secondary scholarship program this past summer, whereby 100 local students received $500 scholarships entering into post-secondary education. On top of this, we're really pleased to partner with a group called Inspire to use a matching structure to bring $4,000 to 12 Indigenous students going on to post-secondary educations. And then really pleased with our summer bus tour program, which increased from 5,100 members of the public brought through the site in 2018 to 6,200 in 2019. Very pleased, and we're looking to see what we can do to increase that even further next year in 2020. There will be a lot going on, but I see benefit in this. I find we can talk about the site, but the more people we can show the site, how we operate it, how we maintain it, how we protect it and secure its future, the better off we're going to be, the better informed the public is going to be, and it's just going to make for kind of a greater understanding of the site and what it does. And then kind of one of my last ones here very quickly, just in terms of community investment, we've now closed our application window for investments for 2020 under Bruce Power's Community Investment or Corporate Social Responsibility Program. We're very pleased to continue with our multi-year support for the Saugeen Memorial Hospital Foundation between 2019 and 2023, $50,000 per year for the foundation. We're very pleased with some of the achievements that have been realized, both at Saugeen Memorial Hospital in the emergency room and other facilities in the area. Very pleased. Grand Fondo was a great success again, and raised $180,000 for Saugeen Memorial Hospital Foundation, looking to increase that one as well, or continue with that and look for additional opportunities. And then flagging other investments like the Bruce County Playhouse and Onward and Upward, Pumpkin Fest. It goes on and on. Really, really pleased to be an integral part of what's happening in the community in Saugeen Shores, and very much open as a community relations group to have those discussions about those opportunities moving forward. And then the last slide for me, because I said I do want to be respectful of the time that's been allocated, just on the Nuclear Innovation Institute. Very pleased with the announcement of iSpace 620. The introduction of the formal board of the Nuclear Innovation Institute this past July, and then welcoming Connectrix as the first founding member. Bruce Power is a very proud founding member of the Nuclear Innovation Institute, but we will equally be proud to be to kind of take a small step back and be a proud participating member and welcome other companies, other organizations, other voices into the Institute as it starts to work on the initiatives around collaboration, advanced research, and so forth. And we want to be an active part of that, but are very, very pleased with such developments as Mr. Bruce Wallace very recently being announced as the new president and CEO. So very excited to see what's happening there as that team moves in very early in 2020. And again, with that, I really sincerely want to thank Council for the opportunity to come and speak. Very much appreciated, and open to any questions that you might have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Chris, we just want to say thank you for coming to update us on everything that's happening at Bruce Power. The world is an oyster, and it's going to open up for us in January with the MCR. So I look forward to all the great, wonderful things that will be coming out of that, and what Bruce Power keeps doing for our community. We're very appreciative. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, and I greatly appreciate that. And the feeling there is mutual that we want to kind of keep that going and keep Council very updated. So thanks once again.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Christopher, for joining us this evening. We in Saugeen Shores have had the privilege of welcoming a number of suppliers to the local area. The number has certainly grown, and we're very happy to host them here in our facility and hope that they will continue to perpetuate that goodwill gesture that we see from our community partners like yourself. You mentioned that we're 66 days away from MCR. Can you help us maybe understand where we might see the peak of that impact in terms of influx of people coming to our community? Is that something that are you able to?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Councillor. So I just had the opportunity to tour the Major Component Replacement Training Centre in north end of Kincardine just a few weeks ago, and I asked the training staff there about that very question. So as we get into the opening of the project, there will be an influx of several hundred additional workers at site. The first real work series is just vault preparation, and of course some balance of plant work going on, and that will be isolating the reactor vault from the common containment system, defueling. So a lot of very structured operations that are happening there. But the real influx of people associated with D-tube, retube, those skilled tradespeople and journey persons coming on that will be bringing through our onboarding and training for those very detailed work series, that doesn't really start till later next spring into early summer 2020. That's not to say we won't be busy. Again, I wouldn't be surprised seeing upwards of, again, a good 500 people plus accessing the site on an immediate basis as we start very early in 2020. But again, it's later that summer where we really start to see the people come in on those detailed work series that will continue the scope of work through removal and installation of fuel channels, steam generators, and other components.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to welcoming those members of your business to our community.
Thanks so much.
Great. Further comments from members of the committee? Well, thanks very much, Chris, for coming in. We always appreciate your updates. Glad to hear you're going to come in a little more often now that MCR is getting going, and you're always welcome. Thanks for coming.
Very much appreciated. Thank you so much as well, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our delegations. We have no public meeting this evening, so that moves us on to report of municipal officers and committees. And 7.3 is infrastructure and development, a staff report on the winter operations plan and the director of infrastructure and development.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Our winter operations plan was updated for the 2019-2020 winter season. This year we will maintain 49 kilometers of sidewalk, which is 2/3 of all the sidewalks in Saugeen Shores, 49 lane kilometers of unpaved roads, and 425 lane kilometers of paved roads. This 7-kilometer increase in paved roads is accounted for in the addition of the new plow driver and the future new plow. It's going to service the developments of Westlinks, Summerside, and Blue Water. It won't be one route. They've been accommodated into the 3 Port Elgin routes in the one new one. The appendix was also updated to include the significant weather event. You might have heard these notifications coming from Bruce County last year. What they are is a change that the province put in the regulation that allows us more time than the maintenance standards to get the roads cleared back to their state of repair. It's sort of when we used to hear that the town has pulled the plows off the roads. So it's the formal process to do that now. The remainder of the document reiterates the maintenance standards required through the regulation and how they apply to Saugeen Shores.
Okay, thank you. We have a recommendation. I'll read it, then we can take any questions or comments. It's recommended that Council approves the 2019-2020 Winter Operations Plan. Questions or comments from members of the committee? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Amanda, has our sidewalk cleaning been increased because of the influx of grade 7s and 8s to the high school, more students walking than normally would be up in that area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we receive requests from residents to plow sidewalks. We tally those requests up, and when we have 10 kilometers, we can justify a new route. So then we come back to council and ask for a new trackless machine and driver. So the last one was 2 years ago, and it was paid through for development charges, and a lot of it services down Westgate, Trillion, and up towards the Summerside in that new development area.
Mayor?
With the, sorry, a follow-up here, but with the increased number of students now walking that normally would have been walking to Northport that are now walking to Saugeen District back in the Mill Street from what street is it? No, the high school right across to almost to the Plex here, to Thomason. The students back in this area here, they have to walk to school now. Will those roads be Wellington? Yep. Gustavus to Wellington. Will they be better kept for the students so that they're not walking on the roads, especially in those new subdivisions just to the east of us here?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Arlington doesn't have sidewalks for the majority of the length, so that's one response. There are a significant number of sidewalks in that area that don't have sidewalk plowing. A lot of the east-west roads do not have that. And even, say, Bricker Street from Gustavus to Elgin does not have sidewalk plowing on it.
I think we're coming into the operating budget here in 10 days or so. And so if councillors have individual requests they'd like to make to extend sidewalk clearing in other parts of the community, that would be an opportunity to raise them. I assume as Amanda pointed out, the department has a tally of what's been requested by members of the public to date, and so if there are additional requests from members of council, we can receive them and consider them. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Amanda, for the report. Last week in the Saugeen Valley Conservation Board discussion, there was a mention about the use of salt and its effect upon our water supply. And so in the report, there is a chart that shows that our percentage of salt in our sand salt mix is by weight of 8%, and the industry standard is 2 to 5%, which would mean that our mix is 3 to 6% over the industry standard. So could you explain for members of the public why we may be going over the industry standard?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We do recognize that it is a higher salt content than what the industry standard does. We did try the 2 to 5% previously, and what we found is that we were putting or reapplying salt and sand so much and filling our catch basins with so much sand that it wasn't worth the effort to reduce the amount of salt. We aren't in wellhead protection areas, so we do not have source water protection salt limits in our area. So for our inlet protection zone, we're more than fine on the salt application from that environmental piece. We do monitor new technologies like the beet juice and that. He was telling me about an experiment that they did just outside Allenford where they tried to do that. They've tried the chlorium sulfate, and we've tried pre-treated salt and sand mix. The county tried that last year. They found it's 30% more expensive, but they didn't find a better yield or a better clearing of it. So we've been working through the county and all the different groups to try to see if there's something different. But honestly, putting down 8% has found to be the prime amount of salt to minimize the amount of sand and number of times we're going out and reapplying material.
As in road salt use was reviewed as part of the source water protection work as a potential contaminant across the watershed, but including in Southampton, which is primarily where our intake protection zone is, and was found not to be a threat to the source, to the drinking water. So that has been studied. Further comments? No? Okay, so all in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. So that moves us then on to Community Services, Parks and Recreation reports, and the first report, the only report, a staff report on the lease agreement with the Port Elgin Sportsman's Club and the Director of Community Services.
Thank you. This evening we're looking for approval for a 10-year lease agreement with the Port Elgin Sportsman's Club for the use of the original road allowance between lots 23 and 24 on the County Road 40. This land is required for the Sportsman Club to allow for controlled access to the back of the lands and for no other purposes. Thank you.
Okay, I have a recommendation. We'll read it and take questions. It's recommended that Council pass a bylaw to authorize the lease agreement between the Town of Saugeen Shores and the Port Elgin Sportsman's Club for the use of part of the original road allowance between lots 23 and 24, County Road 40 in the Town of Saugeen Shores. Questions or comments from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. So that moves us on to communications, petitions for committee of the whole information, and there's 5 items there. Any comments from any members on any of that? Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you. And just with regard to the Lamont Sports Park Committee meeting, there's reference within the minutes to suggest a collaborative, or rather that committee transitioning to a fundraising committee. I just want to refer back to our last committee of the whole where we received reports from various interested citizens group, and I want to encourage members of that committee of council to include and incorporate the other members of our community who wish to partake in that fundraising effort.
Yeah, thank you. Fundraising for the Lamont Sports Park is going to be a matter that's going to come back to this council for approval of an approach. And so there is no fundraising campaign underway at this time, but we're looking forward to working with all those folks, the committee, as well as those folks who wrote letters to us, and to get a fundraising campaign underway. And this council will have give some direction over all of that. So there is nothing left on the agenda, so that will move us on to statements or announcements by members and the Deputy Mayor. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to recognize the passing of a good friend, a community leader, John Kyles, who left us not long ago. And I just wanted to let you know that John Kyles will be missed, and he was very prominent, with the Port Elgin Probus Club, past chair. He did a lot of work with the Port Elgin Saugeen Beaches Association, and just an amazing fellow and friend that is going to be missed.
Agreed. Councillor Schreider, nothing. Councillor Smith.
Just to ensure all members of the public are aware, upcoming next week, November the 14th, is the Shoppers' Night in downtown Port Elgin. And similarly, the Port Elgin Parade. Special thank you to the Port Elgin BIA and other members of the public who have come together to put together the Port Elgin Parade.
Councillor Rich. Councillor Grace. Councillor Carr. Councillor Mayette. Holy smokes, that was quick. I was just one thing. On the 29th of October, I had the pleasure of welcoming, as Councillor Smith commented before, we're welcoming a number of nuclear suppliers, and one which was, I think, very notable was KEPCO, which is now in Port Elgin, and they are a very significant Korean company, and so it's a significant international company who's been attracted to our community as a result of the MCR project, and had the pleasure of meeting some of their senior officials from from South Korea. And so it was an interesting evening, and we welcome them to the town of Saugeen Shores. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Rich. All in favor. We stand adjourned until 10 minutes to the hour.